Nerds International proudly presents
Alpine, the fourth realm of Earth, a world of fantasy adventure awaiting your imagination.
Warp Shell, a universe in ruin. Countless heroic tales waiting to be weaved through space and time.
Ghost Mountain, a place caught between heaven and hell, filled with fireside tales of the Wild West. These are the worlds of Index Card RPG, and this is a podcast about those worlds.
Welcome to the Threats, Treats, and Timers podcast, episode 4. I am one of your hosts, Gary, aka Murder Hobo, and I am here as always with none other than Victor Diaz, the man, the myth, the legend.
Y'all ready for this?
And Frank the Tank, whom is dressed quite swankly. That's a good one. Hey, Frank.
Sure.
We'll
All
go
right,
with that. Cool. You're probably sitting there in your ginch in a threadbare old T-shirt, but
I think maybe we need to poll the audience and have them write in some new rhymes for you.
Sweet, that'd be awesome. Tonight we're going to be talking character creation, how you do it inside of ICRPG, and that's what's going on. Victor, how was your RPG gaming week this so far?
Oh wow, gaming week has been exciting to say the least. I have had 2 different publishers give me the okie dokie to go ahead and build world primers for index card role-playing games. So a little bit more on that here in the near future once I get started on them. But I'm chomping at the bit to get started on those and add them to the growing collection of world primers coming at Ezra Games.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I know who one of them is, but I'm not going to say.
Yeah, we'll talk about that as soon as I have a little bit more details. But I am really looking forward to playing those games and getting that world primer out there, getting some more players to do what we do, play some games.
It's funny, for as close as my ties are to the one you're talking about, or one of the ones that you're talking about, I've never played them either. And I love Dark Sun, and, well, never mind. We're not going to say anymore because it's going to lead into a conversation.
Everyone who's listened, everyone who's been on the Google Plus page knows that I've been working on a Dark Sun one for a little while. I took some, a sprinkle of this and a sprinkle of that and threw them together in a document. There's still some more work that needs to be done. It is a work in progress, but I think this has a good start for the Dark Sun World Primer, but that's not even one of the ones that I got permission to do work on yet. So we'll let the audience figure that out here in the next few days.
Nice. What about you, Frank? You do anything interesting in the world of RPGs this week?
I had a busy week. It was actually a busy work week, which is somewhat unusual, but it pays the bills, so that's important. But most of my RPG week was mostly just talking to Victor, either talking about our Leviathan setting. I'm really excited about it, and I think it's really coming along well. Or just kind of like, smiling and grinning as Victor starts to tell me about, the latest and greatest setting that we're going to be working on.
I think I threw in a few comments about how we needed to steer the boat back in the Leviathan direction so that we at least get something done. Too many pots in the fire.
Yeah, that's coming along really nicely, Gary. Thanks for that push, by the way, because Frank and I talked about that for a short period of time, and it looks like we have a really good basis for the start of a really decent adventure. And I'm not just talking a one-pager. This one could be 4 or 5 episodes, 4 or 5 game sessions. I think that it'll take. There's some cool maps that Frank can work on, some map ideas that are going on in there. Probably going to introduce the big evil bad guy that they're going to fight for the Leviathan game or the campaign setting. So I think we have a good start on that. What do you think, Frank?
Yeah, I think it's shaping up pretty good. I think we'll probably look to release like a one-page adventure to borrow an idea from Savage Worlds, and to borrow another idea from Savage Worlds. I think we're going to have a pretty decent campaign that's, probably going to have, say, 4 to 8 adventures, and as well as a whole campaign world that you could kind of do a lot of side treks. I mean, we started off with this concept of modeling it is the best term on 50 Fathoms, and a lot of people think 50 Fathoms might just be the best plot point campaign that Pinnacle produced. We've kind of taken a sharp left turn, and it's nothing like 50 fathoms. And so, but I think it's going to be a fun setting, and I think we've got enough that we probably might, if we're lucky, we'll have the first world primer that is not a Runehammer product.
I would pressure you for more information on it, but I don't know how much you guys want to give up at the present moment. Should we just leave it at that? I think we just leave it at that.
We can tease some more in future episodes. I mean, it's too bad people don't have access to our chat, because, man, that would be great.
Yeah, we would break the chat software that we're using to be able to go back and forth if we had, 60 people all talking to us at the same time about it. Yeah, you're right. I think that would be pretty cool. Maybe we should start a hangout and start talking about it in a future episode. We'll write that one down and do some bullet points together to talk over Leviathan campaign.
Don't you remember the ding fries are done? People do not want to join the chat that you two guys are in, where your phone is constantly going ding, ding, ding. It's like, I don't even think you guys work. I think, like, if they paid you per text to talk to one another, you'd be millionaires.
Yeah, people are always wondering, like, Vic,
we need to start that fund.
Wow. All right. Well, I tell
Gary,
you,
by the way, there is a mute button, Gary, on the conversation. You can actually mute the conversation so it doesn't ding your phone every 50 seconds or every 5 seconds.
Oddly enough, I have it on. I'm also part of a Windows Messenger group with a bunch of friends way back in the day. Like, there's probably 15 of them. And if I don't turn my block, like, all noises on at night, my phone would ding all night. So I've gotten into the habit of just leaving it on all the time. And then anytime I have a second or two, I just look at my phone and I catch up. That's why I'm kind of like present and then not present in the chat, and then present again all of a sudden a lot, and then not present. But yeah, anyways, that said, I had a good week. I had a great week in the role-playing world. We did some... This morning we did the, Frank, you're going to be happy about this. Well, happy and sad. I got good news and bad news. The good news is you're going to get a Kings of Convenience episode 3 very soon. The bad news is it's going to be the final episode.
Oh!
I'm not going to tell you what happens, but we recorded that this morning. It was off the hook. It is crazy, wackadoo on such a weird level that even I didn't know what was going on half the time. I was just kind of speechless, but it was super fun to do. Eric Lamoureux, who is the host of the Wild Eye podcast, is building a Wise Guys setting, sort of spawned off of his Forget About It in Savage Worlds, the Just Insert Imagination's little campaign kits that you can buy, or con kits, and he's doing a Wise Guys. It's called Wise Guys. I think that's what he's going with, and it's a 1985-ish style mobster kind of a deal. So we've been playtesting that the last little while, and it's super fun too. I play this Linda, the snake charmer. She's got like a magic show, and she's got a snake and stuff like that. And we've got a roller derby chick. We've got the crime bosses, but just the way that he's pieced everything together, it's super fun to play, because you actually have to kick up any money that you find to your boss, who then kicks it up to his boss, and there's all these things that happen. Yeah, it's pretty neat. There's a lot of mechanics to play the game, which is super fun. So we did that today. And then, yeah, here I am Sunday night hanging out with you guys. We're going to make some sweet main topic character creation ICRPG love next, which is fantastic. That's my week.
You killed me, Gary. You killed me.
I killed both of you. I think you're both dead, but that's cool. All right. Let's get over to the main topic and talk a little bit of character creation.
Okay, everybody, this one's dedicated to the old country, where you used to sip on bourbon all day, slay goblins, and get some sweet loot. It's called Walking Through Alfheim. Come on. Walking through Alfheim, getting to know a wilder kind, looking for a purpose in a tavern side. I would meet you anywhere. Cold and Lagar meets the air. Tirolo Stanos, never looking behind. Yeah! Woo! Alfheim, everybody! Woo! Shit! Where's the whiskey?
All right, main topic, character creation. How to build a character inside of ICRPG. I really like the way that he does his character creation. Before, back in the day when I first started playing, I would sit down and I would crunch numbers, and I would spend an inordinate amount of time looking at all of the equipment, trying to choose the item that did the most damage, stat my strength out so that I would get the most benefits from this. And this is like before we had computers. We're talking like Commodore 64. We didn't have, HTML designs where you could just go and punch your statistics into like a min-max machine and pump out the best character. We also didn't have internet back when I started playing, sadly enough. I'm really aging myself here. So there wasn't this mass collection of ideas on how to build character sheets. So I feel like I really did it the old-fashioned hard way all the time. So over the years and through the easier systems that I've decided to play, the build a character in ICRPG starts with the one way that I choose to do it now. And I tell my players this all the time. Don't come with a pre-built character. Scour the internet for an idea that you have and choose an image. And come at me with that, and we will build your character based on that image. The thing that I like about this, I don't know how you guys feel about it, we'll get into that, is it kind of ties into your second one, dream a story. But when I see an image, let's say I have an idea for my druid, and there's a cool image of this fierce druidic woman, and she's standing over top of maybe like or half transforming into like a fierce looking bear, but she's got this serious look on her face and stuff, and those are the kind of things that I want to bring into the character. Now, obviously, I'm going to stat her out according to, how I want to get her into the druid builds and stuff like that. But it all starts basically from that image. Frank, what about you? Because you've basically already got your own little football team of role-playing gamers.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Do you just say, okay, we need a fighter, thief, mage, and a cleric kind of a thing, and here we go?
Well, I wish it were that easy. I think if I were to show up at the table with pre-gens, it would be a lot easier. Because I think what happens is one of my kids will say, "Oh, I want to be a rogue or a thief or whatever your brand is," and two others will then say, "Oh, me too." So if you're playing a classic game of D&D, you're really going to have an unbalanced party in my house. So yeah, I think that it can be really interesting playing with a younger audience, especially in my house. So the best thing to do is to being able to start with, well, tell me a little bit about who your character is before we even get into all the rest of the weed.
When you buy core through drive-through or wherever you get it at, it comes with 3 volumes of different images, which is super helpful. So there is like a heroes deck that you can get inside of ICRPG if you buy the core from drive-through. And you could just literally print all of those out, lay them out on the table, and have your characters just choose from the images that you throw out the ones that most appeal to them. So, the nice part about ICRPGs, you don't even have to have your players look for an image. They can actually, just like it says, choose one from a pre-built pile of images that are already available when you purchase this one. What about you, Victor? How do you like to go about making your characters?
Over the years, I think I've kind of gotten used to going after the faults in people's characters. For me in particular, I know it's kind of been my crutch because it always seems like I always make a character has that one character flaw. In Savage Rifts, notorious for playing a leyline wizard, and one of the guys that I talk about a lot because I really like the character is the fact that he has no legs, and that's his big flaw. That's a really big drawback for him to be able to do a lot of things. Swimming's not that easy when you don't have legs, and granted, he has a lot of the magic to help him, but I think that's where I go with a lot of my characters. They'll have certain character flaws, certain fears, certain phobias, certain physical or mental issues that they have to go through, and usually from there I can build their background, build their history, build their strengths and their weaknesses based off of that flaw. I've always seemed to go with that, and it seems to work pretty well. I've got some pretty I think I have some pretty memorable characters. Whether people know about their flaws or not, it's all about how you frame that PC and how that point of view comes from them. So for me, it's been chasing after the various different issues that people have, whether it's fear of heights, fear of water, whether Ezra Harden, the guy I play in one of the Warp Shell games, a lot of people don't know it, but he has a fear of the number 4. He doesn't collect things that are number 4. He won't touch them. He won't, he won't go after them. But it hasn't come up in a role-playing session yet. But at least if I have it, because it kind of is the reason why he does a lot of things in odd numbers, 3s and 5s, because he doesn't like the number 4 for whatever reason. He's afraid of it. I haven't written out why yet, but for right now, it's working.
The Savage Worlds really opened my eyes to playing hindrances. I think it's one of the sweet things that drew me into that game, which is pretty neat. The reason I like choosing images off of the internet, like I'm pretty sure that I know what I'm going to play when I want to come into a game. I'm going to choose one of the basic archetypes. I'm going to go look for a thief or something like that. But then I'm going to find that thief. I'm going to scour images of thieves through the through the Googs, and I'm going to find that one that appeals most to me for what I'm looking like. He might have a bunch of tinkering mechanisms, maybe on his belt or something like that, and hide in the shadows, kind of stealthy kind of a guy that uses gizmos and gadgets to get the jobs done. Another nice part about choosing an image too is you always have something to go back to. Like if you need that refresher on how am I supposed to play this guy or what was I thinking, just looking at that original image will bring back so much, the main reason that you built that character. Once you've chosen an image and you have an idea for your character, the next step inside of ICRPG is to stat them out. You get 6 points to distribute among stats, armor, and effort. If you've played Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for any amount of time, then ICRPG is very similar in that it has strength, dex, con, int, whiz, and charisma. You get 6 points. You also have armor and then effort. So you've got your basic, your weapons, your magic, and your ultimate, which is 4, 6, 8, and 12 as far as the dice go. So your 6 points can be distributed among any one of those slots. So it's kind of, if you're used to playing 5th edition, it is a point-buy system, but it's basically you just put however many points. So let's say you're going to build a fighter. Frank's making a tank. Where are you going to put your stats if you were to build it yourself?
If I'm building my character, and that's a good place to start. I enjoy playing fighters. I'm looking at that barbarian character, so I'm really gonna put a good deal in strength. I might put 2 or 3 points in strength, knowing that the points actually mean a +1, 2, 3 on my rolls. So I really want to be able to increase my, all of the rolls that have to do with strength, since he's kind of a beefy kind of guy. At the same time, I'm probably going to put 1 or 2 into armor right off the bat, so that he's a pretty durable character as well. Looking at it from my point of view, because I GM a lot and I design a lot, I know that toughness usually means a whole lot more than how much damage a character can put out. So if I've got anything left at that point, if I put 3 in strength and 2 in armor, I'm probably going to be adding 1 to damage. Now, this is where it really kind of gets tricky, because I've only got 6, but I've got 11 spots. And man, I really want to be able to beef up a lot of those spots.
Yeah, if you're making your barbarian and he's walking around in his loincloth, would you put points in armor? If, let's say, you're building Conan, because I don't think Conan wore a lot of armor.
No, he really didn't wear. I mean, it depends on at what point in his life in the chronological order. But yeah, I mean, in most cases, he's depicted as somebody really just wearing a loincloth, or some other sort of just something around his waist. Maybe a chainmail shirt of some.
I think you're right though about the armor. Armor's not necessarily the amount of physical punishment that the equipment that you have can take. Armor can also represent your ability as a swordsman. Conan was a good swordsman, so a lot of his ability a lot of his defensive capability was due to the fact that he can use that sword to defend himself from arrows and other, melee attacks that are happening to him. But it can also represent a little bit of your constitution, how much physical punishment you can take above and beyond what most normal people will be able to do.
I did want to point out that There, Dave Ism's ICRPG character sheet that he's posted on the Google Plus, it takes the elements from 5th edition and imports them into the Strength Dex Con statistics. So what I mean by that is under Strength, if you're playing 5th edition, you have Athletics and Brute Force is what he's got in here. Dexterity, he's got Sleight of Hand, Stealth, and Acrobatics in the same blocks, just so you have an idea as a new player where if you're going to put points into Dex, what benefits you're going to get. Constitution has toughness, poison recovery, climate endurance. What that means is like, enduring the weather outside. So yeah, if you've seen a 5th edition character sheet, which I'm sure everybody has, they have those linked stats off to the side. Those are.
You mean your proficiency bonuses?
Thank you, sir. So yeah,
you're welcome.
He's incorporated proficiencies into ICRPG so that if you're a newcomer, you have an idea as to what each one of those statistics sort of points to,
right,
which is super helpful. I really like that about his character. So yeah, no, that actually makes good sense too. Busting out your sword, blocking the damage. Armor, I guess, in a sense, could be not just strapping on your helmet or your breastplate. It could, in a sense, literally be like your ability just to, swing a sword around and block incoming attacks if you wanted to sort of trap it that way, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, whenever I've had new players at the table, or ever had people who don't have a lot of experience with role-playing games, or maybe even just with Dungeons and Dragons, everyone in D&D is used to, armor class. That determines on a scale of 1 to 20 or whatever, how tough you are, how hard it is to hit you. And for me, I've always told them that another way to look at armor or armor class is to look at it as a defensive score. It's not just the amount of armor and protection that you have on, but it's also your ability to dodge a blow, roll out of the way, use a weapon to parry, see an arrow coming or see an attack coming out of the corner of your eye. Some people react faster to that. Some people have training to be able to defend themselves with other weapons with that. And some people are just, they're just tough. They can take a good kick to the head and not get knocked out. Whereas if it was me, you just sneeze on me and I'd probably fall over and be out for 10 days.
Mm-hmm. I find it funny too that one of the last steps in finish your character is choose your bioform. Now, inside ICRPG, just like inside D&D, the similarities are the bioforms actually give you bonuses to different things. So I would say that choose your bioform should be like a stat or what you do as you're statting your character out at this stage of the game. Because if you're playing, for example, let's get into some of the different classes or the bioforms. If you're playing an elf kind, you get Dex +1, Int +1. Dwarves, of course, are Constitution and Charisma. Small folks, which are like your I guess they could be anything, literally, like your gnomes, your
dwarves, your halflings, your gnomes.
Yeah, they get Wisdom and Magic effect +1. Humans are Intelligence and Weapon damage +1, and then you've got hill folk, which are like the huge, thick-boned kin of bears and wolves, keeper of the wilds. They're like almost 8 feet tall, so they're kind of like giant kin. They get Strength +1 and Basic Work +3. So I would say, as you're building your character, choose your bioform immediately while you're in this phase of statting out your character. I would say don't wait, because it can really, those couple of extra points can really determine where you're going to drop the rest of your points.
I think that way of thinking, choosing your bioform right as you're doing your stats, is kind of a munchkin way to think about it. I'm in a totally different camp, where I would rather you concern yourself about your character, your character's capabilities, your skills, your powers, the things that are going to make you who you are. Because it makes no difference if you make that character. When you add the bioform at the end, that's just kind of icing on the cake, a cherry on the sundae, so to speak. I just happen to, pick a bioform that's smarter than most of the other folks, so he gets a bonus to intelligence. Or you pick a hill folk, you're going to be a little stronger than most folks because of your size. To me, it doesn't matter whether it's a hill folk or a halfling, or whether it's a fragment, or whether it's all the zill or whatever. Even what campaign type you're playing in, it's all going to be determined based off of your stats and your abilities. Where your character comes from, so to speak, where he gets all the powers and what his focus is. A Dex character is a Dex character, so he just happens to be an halfling. That means that the halfling is going to be a little bit better. He's going to get that +1 to dexterity, and he's going to make him a little bit better at doing those types of skills. It's just two different methods, right? Neither one is wrong. We've done it for 30 years that way, and there's been thousands of people that have done it that way. That's one of the beauties of role-playing games. But either way, it's a good way to be able to determine what your character does, what he's capable of, and more importantly, what you as the player want him to be able to be good at.
Mm-hmm. I do like the gnome tank in World of Warcraft.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
They're always pretty funny to watch run around. So once you've statted out your character, you've put your points where they need to be. The next step is to get your loot happening. Now, this is where we get into this is where ICRPG starts to separate itself from D&D on a much broader scale. So you're going to get your starter loot, and of these you can choose one. There is a list of different things in here, from mugs to boots to armor kits, magic ammo. There's a few different things, some rings and stuff like that, but there's a list of maybe 20 items that are going to increase your stats, by a point, or give you a kick in the direction of your player. Like for the Barbarian, for example, the Berserk ring might be cool, +3 ultimate effort, which is kind of neat. Or maybe the Ring of Might, +1 to your strength, which is useful for doing certain things if you're going to make that Barbarian kind of character. An armor kit, if you wanted to be tanky. There's lots of cool stuff in here that you can take. So you sort of get right out of the gate in ICRPG one kind of free magic item, so to speak, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about the loot and the whole, choices of equipment that you get, not only as a starting character, but just in ICRPG alone. One of the great things about it is that you can choose pretty much any weapon that you want. If you want a double-bladed broadsword that's 9 feet tall, okay, great. I mean, it's not going to work for every single situation, but guess what? You're going to roll the same dice with a dagger that you are with a double-bladed broadsword based off of the weapon effort, because every single weapon, even a laser pistol, it's all going to have weapon damage is what it's going to do, or weapon effort. And that's really cool because it all comes down to the flavor. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter too much mechanically what you do and what you roll. Now, there are some exceptions. Occasionally you'll get a magic sword that does magic damage instead of weapon effort, and weapon damage, excuse me. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, there's all kinds of fun stuff. One of my favorites in the starter loot was the greedy gloves. When you roll an ultimate die when opening chests, that's so cool. You get to roll a D12 whenever you want to open chests.
That is a good one.
Yeah, as a thief, can you imagine? Everywhere. I'd be opening every door, every chest, every single thing I could do to use my greedy gloves on. That would be awesome.
Yeah, get loot faster with these clever gloves.
Yeah.
Once you've chosen your starter loot, and the next thing up is choose your starting weapons. And just like you said, choose up to 3. I find this section here so much faster because all you need to do is tell me what weapons you want to have. I want a bow, I want a long sword and a short sword. Cool. Write them down. Right. That's it. Yep. You want to, there's no looking up stats. How far do they shoot? How do they do this? How do they do that? You don't need to do any of that. All you need to know is that the weapon damage is going to be D6 across the board, unless you have a magic item that's going to have special traits. Right. The last thing you do is choose the equipment, and now it says choose 3 of the starting equipment. Now, this starting equipment is basically things like rope and hooks, spell books, shields, maybe some tools, coins if you want it, or an instrument. So pretty straightforward. You choose 3 from 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, from 10. So there's basically 10 items. They're each one of these items.
And you don't have to choose from those list of items. I mean, every world primer like Warp Shell and Alfheim are going to have 2 different types of starting equipment. Many of them, a rope and hook is a rope and hook, whether it's in sci-fi or whether it's in fantasy. But you don't have to choose from these equipment lists. There's many times where I've had players come up to me and go, I want, a crossbow that has a blade on the end of it. Okay, a bladed crossbow. And there you go. And that's one of the items. And they're like, really, I can have that? And it's almost surprising to them, like anything I can come up with my imagination. They can't get a giant flaming dragon staff that shoots meteors or whatever. Well, that might be all of your choices if you really want that. But yeah, you can pretty much pick any of the equipment. And then there's the loot lists that are way at the back of the shabby loot, the starter loot. There's like 100 of them. There's a starter loot table that you can, if you want to randomize it and throw the dice 3 times to be able to see what you get. If I rolled like a 77, I'll get a firestone that gives me +1 magical effort. whenever I use it on all of my magical effort. That's a starter item. I mean, you can go to the loot table and take your choice. There's a lot of fun there.
Yeah,
I think that goes all the way back to the beginning where we talked about, pick your image of what you want to play.
Right.
And, and after that, it's just a matter of, well, tell me, what does this character carry as far as a weapon goes? Now, I would probably have somebody at my table describe to me, this amazing, sword that's as tall as they are and is got a name, and it's the Dragon Slayer, and it holds the souls of every dragon it's ever slayed, and but again, okay, well, you've got a +1 sword.
Sorry you almost make it sound like you've just bursted a bubble there or two, but
well, they don't know that, right? They don't. It's, at some point you could sit there and go, oh, well, +1, it's not much, but when you consider that, that's a pretty decent increase compared to what you get. You can have a story behind a sword, and that story might not be true.
Yeah,
that's true.
And I also never thought about really looking into rolling up the shabby loot or giving them access to those, because that's a great idea. Come to think of it, instead of using.
Well, sure, why not? I mean, everyone wants to play Han Solo, but if Han Solo's character isn't in Warp Shell and there's no heavy blaster and there's no Millennium Falcon in it, well, then what's the point? You're not Han Solo. That's the freedom of choice in role playing games is the whole point of playing the game. It takes you outside of anything that any novel, any board game, any war game, or any video game will be able to do. That freedom of choice, and why let the players, when they're coming up with a great concept, hinder them or shackle them by saying, no, you can't have that, giant, that fire giant's long sword that flames on command. Well, maybe when he tries to flame it, it doesn't go on, and he has a fake. And you don't have to tell them that upon character creation. Let them go through that and let them figure all that out. As a good GM, you should be able to not only give them what they want, but also, create limitations at times when it's right for the story or when it's right for the character.
I got a couple of questions for you, and I'd like to kind of get your take on this. So going back to the building your stats section out, basic work. Now, basic work is just rolling a d4, and it says using your bare hands and raw wits can be very useful in unpredictable perils. So here's my question. Let's say that I gave you guys a locked chest, and you are not thieves and do not have thieves' tools. Would you allow your players to use basic work on that locked chest, even if they didn't have lock-picking tools? And why?
Absolutely. I mean, it might be a hard roll because you're trying to pry it open with your sword or a dagger or a crowbar. But yeah, why not?
Well, I would put the sword, the dagger, and the crowbar as like a tool and up it to weapons damage if you're going to try and use your sword to pry it open.
If you're going to smash it open, maybe. If you're just going to try and pry something open, I don't know if I would go as far as making it.
See, now this is where it's the GM's point of view. I have a different point of view on that. If they had a crowbar, I would let them do basic work. If they had a weapon, I would let them do weapon effort on the chest. If it's just their bare hands, knock yourself out, but all you're going to get is bloody knuckles and torn fingernails because you can't fit your finger in the keyhole. You can't, you can pry it open, pick it up, and throw it all you want. You're only going to do maybe a point of effort every single round. So it's going to take you forever. Yeah, eventually you might break that chest. If it's a 2-heart chest, it's going to take you quite a bit of time. But if you've got a crowbar, okay, now we're talking. That's basic effort. If you've got a sword or a maul, okay, there's weapon effort. You'll break this thing open in just a little bit. So 2 different points of view. And what I always try to consider is how important is what's in the chest to the game that's going to happen. Do they really need the key that's in there in order to go to the next level? I may make them allow it to get it open right away. Is there a timer affecting the change or affecting the effort that you need to do? Do I need to have them open it in 3 rounds or less? And there's 4 count on the timer. All of that is something to consider as a GM, but it's all about your point of view of what you need to accomplish for the next step. If it's just another random magic item because they milestone or they need another one, I may not even have them do anything, but just make the target DC and it opens. It's not, if there's no pressure and there's no timer on there, just give it to them. Let them have it. They've earned it at that point. And then now they have the +2 giant magic sword to go with. But again, it's about the point of view of the GM of where he needs to be, where he needs to put them.
Yeah, because there is different kinds of locks. Like You
Sure.
could have just a dial, and do you know what I mean? And you have to, or
Yeah.
let's say like on a briefcase would be the prime example, where you're spinning a tumbler to like a 1, 2, or 3 slot, so you have 999 combinations, kind of a thing, and that would be
Sure.
big. But I don't think they really had that kind of a lock in a fantasy setting. Now maybe they do in I guess yeah. See, now I was just kind of answering my own question. It just depends on. Because in Warp Shell, I could see them having to enter a code on a lockbox where it's, you've got your keypad and they just try this code, basic work that way.
So
but
now it turns into a hacking attempt because it has a fingerprint, iris reader or whatever on the door, so they're not going to be able to get past it. But I like to throw lots of loops at my players. I will put an old-fashioned wrought iron 16-pound, black iron padlock on the door, and they're like, great, how do I hack into that? And no one's got lock picks because you just don't think about it. And so they're coming up with creative stuff like, okay, let's get out the crowbar, the plasma cutter, I'm going to shoot at it with my gun, that kind of stuff. And again, it depends on the point of view and how long you want to delay them.
I don't want to get too far off track here, but bringing it back to character creation, in thinking about those concepts, Gary, you're building your murder hobo. Where are you going to be putting points in terms of I'm not playing a rogue type character, I'm playing a fighter type character? What are you thinking in terms of what if we don't have that thief in the party, and how am I going to get those boxes open from Gary's character point of view? Would you put points in basic work? Would you put points in weapons damage?
See, now if my only intention was to, or let's say I was playing a thief character. This is what I was going to ask. Have you guys ever seen lock picks inside the game statted out?
No.
Do you know,
No.
So here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that
They're just equipment.
if basic work is just your bare hands, you're not sticking your finger in a lock, old school, let's talk fantasy, and opening that lock. But I'm going to say that if you did have, I would consider a lock pick a weapon, in the sense that it's a weapon to be used against a lock, if that makes sense, right? Like, you're going to swing your sword at a person, sure. I'm going to use my lock pick in that same fashion on a lock, like it's there to do damage to this lock, kind of a thing. So I would give, instead of basic work, I don't think I would let a player in my games use basic work on a lock. You would have to have a lock pick. Here's another reason why, too. In my years of gaming, if somebody's playing a thief, they've taken that character because they want to be the person that opens the doors and opens the chests and does this. This is what they're at. Just sure. Like when you see in Savage Worlds somebody takes the obese hindrance, you know that person wants this hindrance to come into play at some point. You try and get in the car as you're being chased, but you're so obese that you get held up and stuck in the door. Maybe you're half hanging out the door when he takes off or something, right? Like in Savage Worlds, when you play your hindrances to work against you in a negative fashion, you get a Benny for it. That's the mechanic. So you take hindrances based on what you want to see happen in your game, and I think that rings true for building a thief in ICRPG. Or for in any game for that matter. If you're going to be the thief class, when it comes to these kinds of things, and in old school fantasy, the thief's the guy that opens the locks and opens the doors and does that kind of stuff. I would say out of the gate that I would give him, his tools would allow him to do weapon damage on locks, which is also going to be it's going to be the reason that everybody turns to him and says, here, can you open this for me, kind of a thing. And he gets to do it because that's what he wants to do. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you're giving him a bonus because you're giving him a D6 versus a D4, and that's sort of an encouragement for playing that type of character. I totally agree with that ruling.
Yeah, it's like having the lockpicking skill. You're going to be better than most other characters because you've been trained on how to use those tools or how to use that skill. Yeah, we got to remember that loot not always just represents an actual physical item. Loot can represent a skill, an ability, a power, a spell that you may be able to use that only that character can be able to use in certain situations or under certain conditions. Lockpicking is a good example of that.
Well, the one thing that I really like is that there is no hard and fast rules in ICRPG.
Right.
And this lockpicking thing came up a while ago because there was, I don't remember what we were doing, but it's just like, it just didn't seem right to me that basic work would allow you to get into a locked box, like that had an actual lock on it. So anyways, I did some thinking on that. Weapons damage, another cool part about weapons damage too, straight across the board, we were back to that. What were we talking about before when I sidetracked you guys with this stupidity? Starting equipment and using the different loot tables that are in the books. That's what we were talking about, which is a fantastic idea. I really like that. I'm going to steal that, Victor. I'm just letting you know right now.
That's okay. I think you're not alone. I think there's a lot of people who still continue to do that. Pick the random equipment or let the characters pretty much choose what they want. I mean, within reason. I'm not going to give them, the spear and magic helmet and the whole, Odysseus's shield and, the pelt of anti-petrification and, a big old magical breast. Big old magical breast. Big old magical breast. Big old magical breast. They're not going to start out with that kind of equipment. But yeah, you want to get a basic shield, you want to get a basic spear, and you want maybe a cestus or a short sword to go with it. Sure, there's your 3 items. There's the 3 pieces of loot. And then they're going to be halfway through the adventure going, I'm starving. Why is my character starving? Because you didn't pick any food. It's part of the choices, right? It's part of the choices that you make. And it's some of the experience that you learn as a role player. Sometimes things like food are more important than that extra weapon or that one piece of armor that you can either buy, find, steal, or happen to come across in a loot crate later on.
The weapons damage being 6 across the board is super cool because it doesn't matter. All weapons are basically trapped in a D6 damage. It's just the way that it works mechanically, which I think is fantastic. And a lot of people might be going, well, that sucks. You might be thinking that, but if we haven't got into the magic system, the magic nuts and bolts about how you could literally find a sword where sure you might be rolling weapons damage, but this sword allows you to do 3 times weapons damage plus maybe magic effect fire or something like that. So you could essentially find a sword that does 3d6 plus d8 of fire damage because you can add in the magical sections of certain weapons. Basically, you can do anything because magic affects all fields in this game: space, time, distance, attacks, damage. Everything is modified by the magic on it. So, if you're new to ICRPG and you're like, well, man, I think that D6 is kind of a dumb idea. Wait till you see it in action, and you find a weapon that lets you do 2d6 or something like along those lines. Which leads me into my next thing, which is more about the loot and stuff like that. So all of the weapons inside of ICRPG, and let's mainly just talk fantasy because that's sort of what everybody knows. They have weapon tags. Victor, what are weapon tags? Explain this idea to me.
Oh, wow. You're going to leave me the hard stuff, aren't you?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So weapon tags are part of the genius that Hankerin has brought in from Dungeon World and Apocalypse World. Weapon tags are what tell you whether or not the weapon can shoot close, shoot near, shoot far, whether it's large, heavy, concealable, bulky, sharp, indestructible. I mean, you name it, there's a tag for just about everything. And at the back of one of the back of the tables, I believe there's a tag chart also where Hankerin was kind enough to kind of put those together in one big, one longer list. And it goes over a number of things, but a good example is a bow. A bow will have a weapon tag of far, meaning that you can shoot at anything up to far range. So if it's close, if it's near, or if it's far, you can shoot at it with a bow. Whereas a crossbow might not have the range of a longbow, so you may only be able to shoot at things that are near. But either way, both of them are weapons, so they're going to give you weapon effort. The bow might be cannot be sheathed, might be one of its weapon tags. So because it's too large and too bulky, and if you're going to wear it, it's going to be pretty obvious that guy is holding a bow. And it's probably going to have the same tag, cannot be sheathed, on the crossbow. Because again, it's a large, bulky weapon. You can't just throw it under a cloak and walk into a bar, so to speak. That's weapon tags in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's pretty slick. So you find this great big ass sword. One of the tags that you put on this cannot be concealed. You now have a weapon, and maybe it does extra damage. Maybe it's 2d6, but cannot be concealed. It's kind of like, now what do you do, right? Like you have this giant weapon.
Exactly.
You're not gonna hide that on your person anywhere and try and sneak into the city with this weapon because you can't hide this thing anywhere. It's kind of that big. Weapon tags are listed in like 143, 144, and there's a bunch of different simple one-word explanations for how you would, what tags you could put on weapons, like a dagger, for example. Maybe you found like a rare one, and it's also small, so it's you could put those tags on it. After weapon tags, we've got destroy, lose, and regain. So what are your guys' thoughts on this? Let's pick it up with Frank. A shield isn't the only thing that takes a beating. How do you feel about destroying magic items?
Yeah, I think that there's a number of different concepts at play here. I think even in 5th edition, you do have charges on items, so they might wear out over time. I mean, that's an older concept, and I guess it all depends on the type of play that you want in a game, and I suppose you could leave that out if you didn't like the idea of a magic item losing its effectiveness over time, or the idea of being able to sort of sunder a magic item or destroy a shield.
Yeah, it all depends on what kind of world that you're playing in, right? Because if you're going to be playing in like Eberron, that's a high magic world. There's going to be magic items left and right. And that might be a world where magic items are indestructible. You won't be able to destroy it, no matter, not even dragon breath or, in a volcano. You're going to have to go to real extremes to be able to destroy a magic item or change or alter a magic item. But you can also buy wands on a street corner. It's just one of those games. But if you play an opposite game like Dark Sun, magic items could be a chitin armor that's not even enchanted. It's magical because it's, you get those magical quote unquote bonuses because it's harder to come by. It's more expensive. It's very rare. Or God forbid you actually find a metal weapon. In Dark Sun, a metal weapon is considered a magical weapon because it's extremely hard to break, and it tends to break a lot of other things that are made of bone and chitin and a bunch of other materials that a steel sword can easily cut through. So it is going to depend a lot on your point of view. But having the concept of you being able to break a magic item, and just hand out another one or give them something else to use later on in the game or in the session, I think it's absolute genius. It's one of the cool things that you can do with equipment in ICRPG.
Mm-hmm. It makes the players always strive to keep looking for stuff, I feel,
Well,
yeah.
That's a concept. We can go even to, a totally different system where you look at Cipher system and Numenera, where that's all you're doing is that's almost the player economy is looking for these items that are like one-off items. It's a magic item essentially, but it's got one shot.
They're like throwaway magic items.
Yeah.
So inside ICRPG, you have 10 slots. You have equipped and you have carried. My take is equipped is anything that is magical, that is attuned to your person. So let's say you're carrying a scroll, for example. Scroll for me is going to go into your carried equipment, and let's say you've got a sword that's +1 that you've been wielding and stuff like that. It's in the equip section of your equipment. Do you guys differentiate on that in any fashion? Your equipped and your carry. What do they mean to you two guys? I guess
it depends on. I think it all depends on the granularity of your game. If you're the type of player who likes the idea of I've got a spot for 10 items, but I need to be able to use 11. Or a game master, for that matter, who likes to put things into play where it's like, well, you've got 10 places that you can have something equipped, but you really need 11. Now you've got a hard choice to make, and that makes the game interesting.
Victor?
Yeah, I tend to agree with that too. I mean, for me, if I had to define them, carried means anything that you have attuned to you, anything that you have on and active, anything that you have in your hands that are ready within a millisecond's moments, just one heartbeat that you can have them ready, whether it's a sword, a bow, a knocked bow and arrow, whether it's a magic medallion that's on protecting you, whether it's a force field belt protecting you, whether your plasma gun is locked and loaded, a grenade with the pin, you're with the pin in your hand. That to me is something that you have equipped. Something that you have carried is that 3 weeks of rations in your backpack. The lantern that you stowed because it's daytime and you don't need it right now. The 16 scrolls of, Yogg that you have stolen from the Cave of Wonders that you have put away in a waterproof case. All that stuff is put away. To me, anything that's carried is stowed and stored safely. So, when the GM decides to throw your character down the waterfall, it doesn't go floating down the river.
So would you consider armor as an equipped item?
Yes. I would always consider armor an equipped item, which reduces the amount of things that you can have equipped, right? But
Sure.
you do that because you want to have the protection of armor on all the time until the GM decides to wake you up in the middle of your sleep after you took the armor off, because you're covered in carrying crawlers. I mean, that stuff happens. That's the kind of design and that's the kind of game that you want to play. But that's my definition of it. That's how I do it. If you have a sword, that's the magic sword of Goth or whatever you want to call it, and it's currently carried and not equipped, that means you have it wrapped up in, oiled leather, tied up and strapped to your back underneath your backpack, or it would be very difficult for you to draw that weapon out within a round. It would take you an action to get it unstowed and in your hand ready to fight with. Whereas a short sword, you could carry that around as your equipped weapon and, put the sword of Zog, on your back and not worry about it for the moment. So you could attack with the short sword in one hand and that's equipped, but the other one would be carried.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll have to pick and choose. When you get to a loot chest, if you've got 10 things that are carried and 10 things that are equipped, and you've just been, you're near the end of the dungeon and you've just got a bunch of stuff that you're carrying around. Oh, crud, I need that magic staff, but I don't have any room left. Every pocket, strap, belt, bandolier, backpack, sack, and everything else is full. I have no more room left. I'm going to put it in my teeth. No, it doesn't work that way. You need to get rid of something. Okay, I'm going to eat some food. Now I have a slot. And they're going to take the staff, and they're going to have to get rid of something carried or something equipped in order to be able to fit it.
I think in essence that was the original spirit of encumbrance, which of course nobody ever used.
Yeah, that's an accountant's nightmare right there. I mean, if you got to get the calculator out to figure out how many grams you have left or how many half pounds, spaces you have left on your body, I'm sorry. I work with numbers all day long. The last thing I want to do is play with numbers all day long.
So here's a quick one for you. Helmets. Let's say you've got a helmet that gives you +1 and
equipped.
You're going to put it, but you would let your player sort of just rip it off their head and throw it away and consider it not equipped, unlike armor where they're going to have to take time to get it off.
Well, sure. If you want to throw it away and just throw it off to the side, or if it's just a regular helmet, nothing special that you want to keep, maybe a free action to, drop your weapon, to drop the helmet, so to speak. Now, if it's, Odysseus's helmet and they want to strap that to their backpack, they just want to take it off because the heat's getting to them, but they don't want to throw it away or lose it. Okay, now I'm going to say it's going to take an action for you to change that from equipped to carried. It does free up an equipment slot, but now one of your carried slots is full. So if you've got a full backpack back there and it's got 10 spaces and you want to carry your helmet just to get some breathing room, sorry, you're going to have to either eat some food, dump some water, drop a lantern, get rid of some torches, drop that extra dagger, or get rid of that sack of coin, whatever you want to do to be able to save that helmet. They have to make those choices as they go, because the limitation of 20 items, 10 equipped and 10 carried, is purposeful. There is a reason for that, and you have to, well, at least in my games, I tend to look at that as there's a reason for the number of equipment and the maximum amount of stuff you can get, because it stops munchkinism. It stops people from carrying, 10,000 gold coins and, the staff of life and the wand of magic fireballs and the dragon skull. And, oh, by the way, I have 3 sheets of armor on chain mail, plate mail, leather mail. And as kids, that's what we used to do because we didn't know any better. But then as we started to get...
Victor, I've got 4 in strength.
Makes no difference. The Hulk is the same size as, a halfling.
I should be able to carry more stuff.
Sure. Okay. I'm not going to have that 3-hour argument there with you. If you want to give them an extra slot for their strength, I mean, that's your prerogative. As a GM, you need to make that call as you go for it. If they just want to add another small sack, another helmet, another sword, 99% of the time, I'm going to say, sure, he's got +4 strength. You've got -1. This is why you're not going to be able to do what he can do, right? And it's just one little item. It's not going to be a big deal. But if next thing you know, they're carrying around a dragon skull and, and 10 items carried and 9 items equipped, and they say, oh, I want to take that with me. It'll fit. I got 1 slot. We're like, wait, hold the phone. That dragon skull is going to take up 7 or 8 slots of your equipped slot. You need to take some stuff off because it's not practical. And if they don't do that, they decide to go on with it, I'll be okay. But the next time you get into combat or the next time you fall down the waterfall, you're going to have to pick and choose whether lose the skull or swim.
Nice. We're going to have to wrap this up. It's getting late. So there's 2 things left we got to talk about. Let's do them as quickly as possible. Spells or loot? What the hell?
Speed round.
Right?
Spells. Yeah, exactly. Speed round. Spells are real simple. Right now, there are two types of spells in the basic core rulebook. There are intelligence spells and wisdom spells. They can be looked at as arcane and divine spells when you compare them to D&D 5th edition. You want to cast magic missile? That's an arcane spell. Make an intelligence roll against the target number of the room, and you hit, and the magic missile goes off, and you roll for magic effort, which is the amount of magic damage that you take, which is a D8. That's it. That's magic in a nutshell. But just like loot, you can only have a certain number of equipped spells at any given time. So as a magic user, now you're kind of playing with fire because, like, do I really need to be holding the torch, or do I want to add a fireball spell to my list of equipped items? Because if it's not equipped, it's going to take you around to pull out that scroll, to memorize, to open the spell book, to use the magic wand, to get the staff attuned to you, whatever it needs to be to transfer that from carried to equipped in order for you to have those list of spells or list of powers that you need to cast. And magic is limited by 10. You can only have 10 quote unquote powers or spells active and ready at any given time. So you play that give and take game.
Even if you have a spell book?
No, now
I think the spell book becomes your
backpack. Your backpack.
Yeah, your backpack.
That's
It's
how I look
equivalent to the backpack, right?
Yeah, because a backpack lets you take up one carried slot, but you can put certain things in your backpack. A certain number of items, like 5 items in your backpack. So technically, you can carry 14 items if you had a backpack with 5 slots.
How about casting from? Since you're kind of our resident spell expert, Victor. how about casting from my spell book?
Sure, you can cast from your spell book if you haven't equipped the spell. But in my games, I would rule that there's either a certain chance that spell will erase or the page will drop off the book, or maybe you won't be able to use it. You'll suffer from spell burn for a little while because you're not trying to control the arcane energies of the world and the universe and focus them like they should. You're just kind of reading them off a book at random, and it makes it more difficult for you to be able to do that.
How many spells can you stuff in a spell book? Depends
on the spell book. If you have the Book of Yogg that has 1,000 spells in it, well, you're going to be able to put a lot of spells in it. But if you have just a necromancer spell book that has 3 spells that were left from the fireball that hit it, well, it's going to be a 3 spell book or 3 slot spell book. I have the variation. I think there is an actual item in there that says how many slots a spell book can take. I just can't find it at the moment. They'll find a 10 spell book that has 10 spaces in it. Sometimes they'll only find 1. Maybe it's just one really drawn out spell, or it's a really short notebook.
I would probably go back again to an old school thought that you've got a traveling spell book and you've got a spell book that is sort of your tome that contains all the spells that you have learned or that you have access to. That would be in a safe spot. You're not carrying that 400-pound beast around. All right, 400 is a little bit much, but 100-pound is easily, you've got a 100-pound book that you're taking with you. You're not carrying your library in your backpack, but you do have a 10-slot traveling spell book.
That I agree with you on that. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it to your characters. You have a traveling spell book. It is a small 100-page notebook that you keep, all of your notations in there to help you memorize, to help you remember all the different incantations and the wording and the languages that you need in order to be able to use this magical spell. No, I completely agree. They would never find the Book of Yogg, quote unquote, and be able to put it on their back and carry it. It's not going to happen. Theirs are just small books of notations, and that's what they would find on either other dead magic users, other evil magic users that they would slay, or maybe even find in a library or in one of the loot boxes or whatever. And we haven't talked about it yet, but loot boxes don't necessarily have to be a box. It can be a locked chest. It can be a library of books. It can be bags of fruit. It could be bags of coin. Loot can come, and loot boxes and chests can come in many different ways, shapes, or forms.
Nice. The last thing on this page is build, craft, and enhance. We're going to put that off to part 2 because there is actually a lot more to character creation that we haven't got to. We're pushing over the hour mark. We still need to smash down the finish your character, but that includes the classes and bioforms and... Yep. Yeah, I think that we could...
Yeah, there's still a lot there. We could easily talk for another hour on just the classes and bioforms because your wizard, fighter, thief, cleric comparison, that Frank and I talk about that a lot.
Okay, well, let's do that. We're going to put a pin in this one. That's it for this episode. This is part 1 of a 2-part character creation specials. bonanza something or other.
Here we go. Here comes the song and dance. Ladies and gentlemen, you can reach us at murderhoboshow@gmail.com or in the subject line if you put ICRPG. You can also get us on Twitter if you can keep it under 280 characters, because that's right. Twitter's moved up and they've doubled the amount of characters you can post. So once again, you can reach us on Twitter at Murder Hobo Show, or of course over at the Google Plus page, Murder Hobo Show, under the Nerds International banner. You can reach out to myself directly on the Google Plus Savage Rifts page. You're always going to find me there. You guys know me. You guys can talk to me over on the Google Plus page for ICRPG as well. Always very active and alive. So make sure you guys drop us a note and let us know what you think.
Frank, what about you? What do you got?
I just want to remind everybody to drop us a line. Let us know what topics you would like us to cover in the future episodes. And as always, you can find my tabletop and virtual tabletop maps, 2.5D modular tiles, and all kinds of other gaming stuff at my Patreon, which is located at patreon.com/FrankT.
Very nice, yeah, for sure. And that's going to wrap up this show. Thanks for listening, folks. We'll see you next time. The Murder Hobo Show is not affiliated with or endorsed by any companies mentioned on this show. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of their respected owners. All items are used under fair use and education or review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Murder Hobo Show, copyright 2018, all rights reserved.